My name is Sarah. Standing here on the porch, watching the sheriff's cruiser drive away with my father in handcuffs, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. It's been a long journey, but I've finally broken free from the chains that held me back. It all started on Christmas Eve, when I received a text message from my father, Henry. Just 3 lines that shattered my world. Sarah, we've decided to keep dinner small this year. Just me, Jake, and a few friends. We'll catch up after the holidays. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Small was his code word for "you're not welcome." It meant his new girlfriend, a young actress half his age, was coming over, and he didn't want my presence to spoil the party. My brother Jake, the golden boy of the family, had never held a real job in his life. He spent his days lounging around, gambling, and expecting everyone else to foot the bill. And here I was, the responsible one, the one who always showed up when they needed me, being cast aside like a worthless piece of trash. I didn't cry. I didn't throw a tantrum. I just took a deep breath and decided it was time to take control of my life. I sat down at my laptop and logged into my bank account. I had been saving for years, building up a substantial nest egg. And now I was going to use it to buy myself a new beginning. I found the listing for a beautiful ranch in the mountains, a place called Pinewood Ridge. It was exactly what I had been looking for, a peaceful, secluded retreat where I could be myself and start over. I contacted the bank and arranged for a wire transfer of the entire balance of my account, $650,000. It was a risky move, but I knew it was the right one. Within hours, the deal was done. I packed my bags, loaded up my truck, and headed for my new home. As I drove away from the city, I felt a sense of freedom and excitement I had never felt before. I was leaving behind the past, the pain, and the disappointment, and I was ready to embrace the future. When I arrived at Pinewood Ridge, it was everything I had hoped for and more. The house was a beautiful log cabin, surrounded by towering pine trees and snow-covered mountains. The air was fresh and clean, and the silence was deafening. It was like stepping into a different world. I spent the next few days settling in, making the house my own. I installed security cameras, replaced the locks, and stocked up on supplies. I also took the time to reflect on my life and the choices I had made. I realized that I had been so focused on taking care of others that I had forgotten to take care of myself. And it was time to change that. But I knew that my father and brother wouldn't give up without a fight. They were used to getting their way, and they wouldn't let me just walk away from the family without a struggle. And sure enough, it wasn't long before they showed up on my doorstep. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was sitting in the living room, working on my laptop, when I heard the sound of a truck pulling up the driveway. I looked out the window and saw a black pickup truck parked in front of the house. My father stepped out first, dressed in a suit and tie, looking as arrogant and entitled as ever. Then came Jake, wearing a pair of designer jeans and a leather jacket, looking like he had just stepped out of a magazine. And finally, there was a third man, a real estate agent, carrying a clipboard and looking nervous. I knew what they were here for. They had come to try and take my ranch away from me, to sell it and use the money to pay off Jake's gambling debts. But I wasn't going to let them. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to let them take what was mine. I watched as my father walked up to the front door and tried the key. When it didn't work, he frowned and jiggled it, then shoved it harder. When the deadbolt still didn't budge, he stepped back and looked at the door with annoyance. He said something to Jake, and Jake laughed and pointed to the truck bed. My father walked back to the truck and pulled out a crowbar. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I watched him approach the door. I knew what was about to happen, and I was ready. I picked up my phone and pressed the panic button on the security app. Within seconds, the floodlights came on, bathing the driveway and the porch in a blinding light. The sound of a siren filled the air, and the red and blue lights of the sheriff's cruiser flashed in the distance. My father and brother froze in their tracks, looking stunned and confused. The real estate agent took a step back, looking terrified. And then, the sheriff's cruiser roared up the driveway and came to a stop in front of the house. Sheriff Thompson stepped out of the car, his hand resting on his gun. He looked at my father and brother with a stern expression on his face. "What's going on here?" he asked. My father tried to explain, but his words came out in a jumbled mess. He claimed that he was just trying to check on me, that he was worried about my mental health. But the sheriff wasn't buying it. He could see the crowbar in my father's hand, and he knew what they were up to. "Sir, you're under arrest for burglary, destruction of property, and attempted grand larceny," the sheriff said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. My father's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't do this," he shouted. "This is my daughter's property. I have the right to be here." But the sheriff didn't listen. He cuffed my father and led him to the cruiser. Jake stood there, looking stunned and defeated. The real estate agent quickly gathered his things and scurried away. I walked out of the house and stood on the porch, watching as the sheriff drove away with my father in the back seat. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but also a sense of sadness. I had always hoped that my father and brother would change, that they would see the error of their ways and become better people. But it was clear that they were never going to change. They were too selfish, too greedy, too consumed by their own desires. I turned to look at my best friend, Lily, who had been standing beside me the whole time. She was a lawyer, and she had helped me prepare for this moment. She put her arm around me and gave me a hug. "You did it, Sarah," she said. "You finally got rid of them." I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I'm free," I said. "I'm finally free." And as I stood there, looking out at the beautiful mountains and the snow-covered landscape, I knew that this was just the beginning. I had a new life ahead of me, a life filled with possibilities and opportunities. And I was ready to embrace it.